This episode is brought to you by pastasworld.com, where you can find jigsaw puzzles, coffee and tea mugs, canvas and poster prints, iPhone cases, and more. You can even order custom items with your own pictures. Go to pastasworld.com or the Pastas World shop on Etsy to learn more.
You're listening to I Love This TV Show, The Golden Girls.
Hi, and welcome to the I Love This TV Show podcast. I'm your host, Noelle from pastasworld.com. Each season of this podcast will contain a TV show in full. This means the length of the season depends on the length of the TV show. The first season is, of course, The Golden Girls. The Golden Girls, Season 1, Episode 22, Job Hunting. Blanche is in the kitchen making a salad and singing. Sophia comes in and is upset that they're out of pepperoni. Dorothy comes in and gives Sophia a kiss. Sophia insists she needs pepperoni. Dorothy offers to make some chicken for Blanche, but Blanche says she's eating vegetables as she's put on a few pounds. Dorothy, Blanche, would you like some broiled chicken? Blanche, no thank you. I'm having a raw vegetable plate. You probably haven't noticed, but I put on 3 pounds. Sophia, on each side. Blanche goes on to say she used to have a waist like Scarlett O'Hara. According to her, Blanche, Scarlett O'Hara had an 18-inch waist. Dorothy gets annoyed and tells her so. Blanche, I used to have a waist just like Scarlett O'Hara. Well, you know that girl had an 18-inch waistline. Dorothy, Blanche, that girl and her waistline were fiction. Rose enters the kitchen. She's upset. Suddenly, everyone is rallying around her except Sophia. Sophia gets annoyed and leaves. Rose tells them that her grief counseling center has been closed. Dorothy points out the severity of her situation, that if she or Rose loses a few paychecks, they could be in real trouble. It's another day, and Dorothy goes out on the lanai to read her newspaper and finds a stranger sitting there reading it instead. She points out to him that she lives there and he doesn't. He introduces himself as Milton. Rose comes out. Dorothy thinks she's dating him and tells her to dump him. But Milton is from the center. She sends him on his way with a referral. But she also gives him her phone number and tells him to call day or night. Dorothy becomes upset when she learns that Rose hasn't looked for a job yet. Sophia comes in the living room and gives Rose messages. She's not happy that her soap opera got interrupted. Dorothy has a message from Barry Glick. He's coming to town next week. She's always had the hots for him. Later that night, Dorothy tries to wake Rose. She has a call from Milton. As Dorothy exits Rose's room, she nearly walks straight into Blanche. Dorothy, Blanche, I hate phone calls in the middle of the night. Now I'll never get back to sleep. I'm as jumpy as a virgin at a prison rodeo. Dorothy, boy, that's pretty jumpy. Dorothy and Blanche sit in the living room. They also find Sophia sitting in the dark. Dorothy has a meltdown because she's going to meet Barry Glick and doesn't want to look like Buddy Epson. Rose comes out and apologizes to them for what happened. The girls tell her she needs to find a job. Then Rose has a meltdown. She tells them that she's had dozens of interviews and no one will hire her. It's left her terrified. Rose runs to her room and she's now laying on her bed hugging a pillow. Dorothy and Blanche knock and come in. They try to comfort her, but it doesn't work in the way they were hoping. Dorothy, eventually you did what you had to do. You took care of yourself. Sweetheart, you're now in exactly the same position. Rose, not exactly. I'm 5 years older and nobody wants me around. Blanche, honey, we want you around. We just can't afford to pay you. Dorothy now gets tough with Rose and tries to shake her out of it. Blanche is getting the blunt of this pep talk, though, and she's getting pissed off about it. Dorothy says she'll help her get more appointments. but she keeps getting told that she's not qualified and is too old. Let's see. Sorry. Dorothy takes a look at Rose's resume and is a bit shocked and horrified at what she finds on it. Dorothy punches up Rose's resume. Since none of them can sleep, Rose volunteers to make them some nice warm milk to help them sleep. Rose: after I drink milk, I go right to sleep. Blanche: I can think of something else after which I go right to sleep, huh, Dorothy? Dorothy: during. In the kitchen, Rose decides that they can't eat milk by itself, or rather drink milk by itself. They need something to go with it. She suggests cookies. Blanche gets out the cheesecake. Rose even finds cookies and cream ice cream. Dorothy wants dinner first. Blanche suggests appetizers. Rose finds pepperoni in the fridge. Dorothy says she's glad her date with Barry is tomorrow because the fat won't have time to show. They all discuss how their weight fluctuates. Dorothy waxes a bit romantically about Barry Glick. She got Stan instead. She tells them about her date with Stan and how she wound up pregnant. Rose pointedly says she waited till her wedding night. Rose: I waited till my wedding night. Blanche: no. Rose: yes. Dorothy: and? Rose: and it was a surprise. Blanche: how is that possible? Another man show up? They wind up discussing their experiences. Rose gets asked another question and starts to melt down. But then Rose asks Blanche a few questions, and then she asks Dorothy the same couple of questions. Both ladies respond very differently. They then realize what time it is and start making coffee and breakfast. It's another day, and Milton is flirting with Blanche out on the lanai. Sophia comes out and comments about Milton. Sophia: I thought he belonged to the other one. Blanche: I'm sure Rose won't mind one bit. Sophia: he's a man. It's not like sharing a yogurt. Dorothy joins them on the lanai. Dorothy says she was just as she remembered him. Barry Glick, that is. She got some bad news on her date, though. Barry Glick does not date women. He's gay. She does take consolation in the fact, though, that no woman will ever have him. Rose comes back as well. She did not get the hospital administrator job, and she wound up at a coffee shop to console herself, and wound up getting a job as a waitress there. 4 shifts a week, 12 hours a shift. Blanche is horrified, but Dorothy is supportive. She congratulates Rose on her new job, and Blanche finally comes around and congratulates her as well. Blanche then asks Rose about Milton. She tells her it's professional only and why. Blanche: honey, I want to ask you about Milton from the center. Rose: yes. Blanche: is that strictly a professional relationship? Rose: oh, absolutely. There couldn't be anything between Milton and me. He has this thing about only dating fat women. The expression on Blanche's face says it all. She is wounded. Be right back after a quick break. Favorite quotes. Dorothy: that's great. If she learned to catch a frisbee in her teeth, she can find work as a golden retriever. Dorothy: nice to meet you, Milton. I live here. You don't. Sophia: if you have to go out tomorrow, ask those crybabies not to call during the young and the restless. Rose: why, oh why can't grief take a holiday? Blanche: I already lost 1 pound. Sophia: in your dreams. Sophia: he's a man. It's not like sharing a yogurt. A lot happened in this episode. It started with Rose losing her job and the difficulty she had in finding another job because of her age. And even though that was the 80s and we're now in the 2000s, it's 2020. As I tape this episode, May 2020, this kind of age discrimination against older applicants still continues on today. Even though it's illegal, it still keeps happening. And it's really frustrating because a lot of older workers, they're loyal, they're smart, they've got a ton of job experience, and they know how to get things done. But still, All people see is age, wrinkles, gray hair, few extra pounds. They go, oh, it's going to cost this much more to put medical insurance for them. Or maybe we just offer them part-time, or they don't want to pay them fairly and just pay them what they think they can get away with paying them. I mean, even in my situation, I'm not old in any capacity, but I have people try to pull that on me just because I'm a woman and be like, oh, well, we're only going to pay you this much. If you want the job, take it or leave it. And I mean, that kind of stuff is just BS, and it's really, really not cool. So hopefully in the years to come, that might change. It was kind of not, I don't know how Rose is going to handle waitressing 12 hours a day. I mean, hopefully she gets to wear comfy shoes. Maybe it's not 4 days in a row. Maybe it's like 2 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on, and then 2 days off or something. Not quite sure. Although Dorothy does describe the Fountain Rock Cafe as being a relatively cushy cafe that's kind of upscale, so maybe it won't be quite as bad or harsh as long as she gets adequate breaks and everything. Ah, yeah, but whew. The center closing. That's always an interesting thing because just losing a job isn't fun. I mean, we're all dealing with coronavirus right now. I bet some of the people that are listening to this have lost their job because of it. And hopefully that everybody that like got laid off from their company will get rehired once this is over so that they have some stability again. But this is just a scary time. Not having a job is a scary time, period. I don't know if in the 80s there was unemployment insurance in Miami. There's no mention. I assume that Rose might have got some severance pay, but it wouldn't be anything like it is nowadays. So it still would probably only be maybe what, 600 or 700 bucks for severance pay back in the 80s. I don't know. I wasn't old enough to work in the 80s, so I'm not 100% certain what it would be like. But yeah, job loss is always, always scary, especially if you are in a paycheck to paycheck situation like they are. They don't make enough money to be able to save and have a decent sized safety net. And there wasn't things like there is nowadays where you could go drive for like a food delivery or other things like that where you could do like a gig job. And it wasn't even heard of then in the 80s. I mean, I guess unless you want to be a DJ, but I don't think they're going to hire ladies in their 50s to be DJs. But yes, oh, Blanche at the end. That one really still always cracks me up about Milton and him only dating fat ladies. Ooh, wee. Although technically speaking, I mean, if you actually stand on the characters side by side, Blanche is the tiniest of the three ladies of the same age. So that kind of confuses me because Rose was definitely bigger and Dorothy was definitely bigger. So not quite sure why he would consider Blanche fat and the other two not. Because they clearly each had at least 10, 15, 20 pounds on Blanche. I mean, in the first season, she's still pretty darn tiny and has a pretty darn tiny waist. It's not as tiny as Scarlett O'Hara's 18-inch waist, but it's still pretty tiny. You know, I mean, I assume it's because the actress Rue danced so long that she was still in such good shape and probably was still dancing while filming the Golden Girls as well. Let's see. So, yeah. Oh, and Sophia. Sophia always cracks me up. She wasn't in this episode all that much, but her obsession with pepperoni is just quite funny. Because I will tend to get obsessed with specific foods. It's like I was on a Taco Bell kick for a while, then I was on a pizza kick. It's like one of my favorite things is a salami and cheese sandwich. And for the longest time, my coworkers would be like, oh, she's got a regular sandwich. And if I'd bring something else, it was like the talk for the rest of the day. So it was like, this is just kind of funny. So people get used to people having patterns, and people get used to having their own patterns. And it's always quite entertaining when someone breaks a pattern or changes something up, even if it's just for one day. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Have a great week.
It's been great reliving this episode with you. Please check out the podcast website, anchor.fm/I love this TV show, no spaces. You'll be able to see the show notes and also support this podcast. To check out everything I'm up to and nerding about, head over to pastasworld.com. You'll also find additional content there. Thanks for listening, and stay golden.